Austria. Situated in the heart of Europe, it has much to offer. High mountains and alpine pastures in the west, Mediterranean lakes in the south, and scenic plains in the east. A land of majestic buildings and of the rural culture of past centuries. A country with an eco-friendly tourist industry, and where nature conservation is top priority. Our journey begins in Vienna, former royal residence and the capital of Austria. The mighty Stephansdom towers up 60 meters into the sky. At its center is a large and splendid gate. A most impressive sight within the cathedral is the Wiener Neustädter altar, the tomb of Emperor Friedrich III. And the pulpit of Master Anton Pilgram, who has immortalized himself here. The Pummerin is the second largest church bell in Western Europe and was made from Turkish cannons. For over 300 years, Vienna was the residence of the emperor, and the nobility had their fine palaces built here. The city was dominated by Baroque architecture. Melting pot of the old monarchy, Vienna was regarded as the world's fifth largest city before the First World War. The Hofburg was the residence of the royal family. It was the legislative center of the city. Multifarious buildings, 18 wings, 19 courtyards, and more than 2,500 rooms. The mighty central cupola of the National Library spans 30 meters high above the most beautiful reading hall in the world. And each day, white Lipizzaner stallions are trained in the Spanish riding school. The imposing rondo of the Neuen Hofburg represents one half of the building that was never completed. Vienna is also the world capital of classical music and Art Nouveau, and its opera house is the most famous building of Ringstraßen design. After the Stephansdom, the Karlskirche is the most important religious building in Vienna. Construction of this excellent example of European Baroque was made at the command of the imperial throne during the year of the plague in 1713. A 4-kilometer-long boulevard, the Ringstrasse encircles the city center. A wonderful blend of architecture, classical antique, cathedral Gothic, Renaissance and Baroque. The Parliament and City Hall, an impressive Gothic building. The Burgtheater and Votivkirche also made their mark on the Ringstrasse. Splendid garden palaces such as the Belvedere and the summer palace of the Habsburger Schönbrunn are now among the city's most popular tourist destinations. The palace's 1,700 well-preserved rooms once accommodated the royal family and the entire royal household. The route up the hill is flanked by various water features and leads to the Gloriette, a pavilion with marvelous views. The Schönbrunn Zoo is of Baroque design. Its enclosures have been well adapted to the needs of the animals. It's the oldest menagerie in the world, and in 1882, a glasshouse for the royal plant collection was built here. At the World Exhibition in 1896, a 64-meter-high big wheel was erected at the western end of the Prater, an entertainment park that continues to please both young and old alike. A perfect way to spend an evening is to visit a Hurigen, a bar in which wine is served with simple but hearty food. Vienna is an adventure and a pleasure for all the senses. Glognitz is the starting point of a fascinating train journey on the Semmeringbahn. This unique railway in the Austrian Alpenvorland has been in operation for more than 150 years. With the invention of the railroad in the 19th century, it was possible to cover large distances at far greater speed. The construction of a railroad across mountain terrain posed a major problem. In the 19th century, the construction of a railroad across Semmering was a risky business. However, that did not perturb Karl Ritter von Geiger. The remarkable views were most likely not fully appreciated by the builders of the Semmering Railroad, as their task was arduous and quite a challenge. The railroad to the Semmering Pass contains 16 viaducts, more than 100 bridges, and 15 tunnels. It was a daunting task. 20,000 workers were engaged to complete the work. The line was inaugurated after only 6 years, and a bright future lay ahead. With the creation of the Semmering Railway, this once remote mountain region suddenly became far more accessible and soon developed into a popular summer retreat for Vienna's elite. Old steam engines were replaced by electric trains. This old railway line is a successful harmony of technology and nature. Close to the Semmering, around 100 kilometers from Vienna, is Schneeberg, a popular holiday destination for the Viennese, in both summer and winter. From Puchberg, one of the oldest rack railways in Europe travels up the mountain, an almost 10-kilometer-long section with a 20% gradient. Since 1897, steam and diesel engines have climbed slowly up the mountain several times a day along this railway line that in its day was a major technical accomplishment. The Schneeberg is the highest mountain in Lower Austria and the easternmost 2,000-meter-high mountain in the Alps. The highest point, the Klosterwappen, is 2,076 meters above sea level. When the weather is fine, the striking lines of the limestone mountain can be seen from as far away as Vienna. Numerous paths cross the remote regions of this unspoiled mountain landscape. Since 1873, Vienna has been linked to a water pipeline that is still in operation today. So the population of Vienna is able to enjoy fresh spring water straight from the mountains. The Wachau, 36 kilometers of the Danube Delta with medieval old towns, castles and ruins, a Baroque monastery and an ancient vine-growing culture. Our journey in the Wachau begins in Stein, that is today part of Krems. This is the gateway to the Wachau, a unique section of the Danube. This medieval city contains 113 buildings. The city's facades and entranceways are decorated in traditional style. Krems, even today, is full of history. An important city set within a unique river landscape that for centuries was the only trading route between east and west. Further downstream, the valley becomes narrower and is even more beautiful. The blue-white church tower of Dürnstein proudly welcomes those who visit the town. It's one of the Wachau's main landmarks. The steep river valley and its terraced vineyards enjoy a temperate climate. In Roman times, vines were cultivated in this picturesque area due to the region's ideal growing conditions. Weißenkirchen has always been a wine-growing center. The small village has a long and dramatic history. Its old houses and lanes look like the backdrop of a film set in medieval times. Spitz nestles picturesquely amid surrounding vineyards and the steep rock walls of the legendary Tausendeimer mountain. The vineyards have brought much prosperity to the area. High above, the ancient ruins of Agstein look down onto the Danube Valley. This was once the domain of the robber knights of the Kurnringer. They placed chains across the Danube in order to waylay passing ships prior to plundering them. Mariatafel, a place of pilgrimage, also lies high above the valley. Someone saw an angel fly into an oak tree, and within its branches hung a picture of the Holy Virgin Mary. The last stage of our journey through the Wachau leads to a cultural gem and a Baroque work of art. Stift Melk, situated on a steep rock above the Danube, both nature and architecture unite as one. A monastic rock, a remarkable Benedictine monastery. It's not surprising that Umberto Eco's novel The Name of the Rose originated here, because Melk is one of the most imposing monasteries in the Christian Occident. A cleverly constructed spiral staircase leads down the monastery church, the center of the monastery. Jakob Prantar built this gigantic Baroque bulwark of faith, and with it created an icon of Occidental monastery culture. All this is the Wachau, a gem created by the mighty Danube. Linz is the capital of Upper Austria, a dynamic industrial city with an old town that has a long history. The third largest city in Austria is located on both banks of the Danube, and several bridges link the city. The Celts settled in this area, as did the Romans, who established a trading center for salt. Since 1898, an electric mountain railway has traveled from the city and up the Pöstlingberg. This railway line was another technical achievement, with a 10% gradient. The view from Linz's 537-meter-high mountain explains why it's called the city on the Danube at the edge of the Alps. The small pilgrim's church in the distance is one of the city's main landmarks. Close by is one of the oldest towns in Austria, Steyr, an old iron town that is situated in a favorable location at the junction of the Enns and Steyr rivers. Sturdy city walls with splendid gates protect the old town, whose former inhabitants were made rich by the iron industry. Lamberg Castle was first mentioned in the 10th century. It's situated in the oldest district above the town. The counts that once resided here gave the neighboring federal state of Styria its name. The large fortunes that were made here over the centuries are highlighted by the historic town's many old civic houses that are still in good condition today. The narrow lanes and long square give a feeling of security amid the historic surroundings. It's as though the city hall wishes to see everything that's going on. Salzburg, a city of bishops and of music, and one of the most popular tourist destinations in Austria. The cathedral is located in the heart of the city. This sacred Baroque building is situated on the same site as the city's first church. The city's most famous address is without doubt number 9, for it was here that the musical genius Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born on the 27th of January 1756. A huge fortress still dominates the old town, Hohe Salzburg, the largest fully preserved medieval fortress in Middle Europe. Tangled and narrow lanes lead through the large palace that served as both a residence as well as a seat of government for clerical regents. Gold mining and the extraction of salt in the Hohe Tauern Mountains created much prosperity in the region. Medieval Salzburg became a German Rome, an Italian-looking city of early Baroque design. A city of art and contemplation. Even today, the cultural image of the city on the Salzach is dominated by more than 100 churches, castles and palaces. The clerical regents and their master builders knew exactly how to impress those who visited the city. And the Prince Archbishops of Salzburg ruled from the residence until 1803, a palace of ecclesiastical power. The nearby Schloss Hellbrunn was the pleasure castle of Prince Archbishop Marcus Sitticus. A unique example of villa suburbana based upon its model in Italy. But the main attraction is the water garden, an interesting place with stunning water features. Salzburg, a remarkable Baroque gem. The Salzkammergut is located in the heart of Austria. A wonderful and romantic landscape set between breathtaking mountains and beautiful lakes. In the Middle Ages, St. Wolfgang was one of the most visited pilgrimage destinations in Central Europe, having attracted 70,000 of the faithful here each year. From St. Wolfgang, a small train travels up the Hofburg, the main landmark of the Salzkammergut. This railroad is 5 kilometers long and rises to a height of 1,795 meters above sea level. On the summit, there are fabulous panoramic views of the surrounding landscape. In the Ice Age, huge glaciers led north. They carved out wide valleys, deep basins, and high mountains. When the masses of ice finally melted, they left behind this splendid landscape. Gentle valleys, crystal clear lakes, and rocky terrain. The village of Mondsee is surrounded by fertile meadows. And the buildings with their rural Baroque and Rococo facades are a captivating sight. The lake is 11 kilometers long and 70 meters deep. It has a relatively warm temperature due to its sheltered location and total lack of inlets from cold mountain rivers. The salt-producing town of Gmunden is the true gateway into the Salzkammergut and is also a popular tourist destination. Here, salt arrives from Hallstatt and Aussee. In the early 19th century, the salt was loaded onto one of the country's first horse-drawn railroads and transported to the Danube. Ort Castle is located on a small island, Gmunden's main landmark. The area in the southeast of the Salzkammergut is known as Aussierland, and the health resort of Bad Aussee is the center of this region, and since 1850 has offered mud and brine therapies. At the beginning of the 19th century, Bad Ischl was simply called Ischl. When a local doctor began to use salt water to treat miners who suffered from rheumatism, the Austrian emperor's personal physician took an interest in the treatment, and Ischl subsequently became a health spa. Along with numerous artists and the like, the imperial court soon put Bad Ischl into the Austrian health spa map. The Dachstein, a fabulous world of rock and ice, imposing and majestic. Its interior full of fascinating caves. As the level of the groundwater reduced, this huge ice cave became accessible to scientists. Today, it's one of the largest ice caves in the world. A veritable paradise in the heart of Europe. Similar to a fjord, the Hallstatter Sea extends in front of the picturesque Hallstatt. This region was first settled in ancient times. A unique mixture of millennia-old culture and beautiful scenery, crowned by a village of historic importance. For many years, the village could only be reached by rowing boat or on foot. Precious mountain salt has decisively influenced life in Hallstatt from around 1500 BC to the present. The historic buildings are now protected monuments, and the welcoming facades of the dwellings have graced this atmospheric village since the 16th century. Its market probably dates back to the 14th century. Archaeological finds from the nearby surroundings indicate that this area was already settled by man from around 5000 BC. So the term Hallstatt culture was born. The Tyrol, a picturesque federal state in the west of Austria, one of the most beautiful areas in Europe, and set within the magnificent Alps. Kitzbühel is the most famous town in what is known as Lowerland. It was once a prosperous mining town, but today it is a world-famous ski resort that's also popular in the summer months. Next we arrive in Unterer Inntal. An imposing fortress towers above the town of the same name, Kufstein, a small town on the Green Inn River that is the theme of many traditional songs. For centuries, this border town was the cause of some hostility between Bavaria and the Tyrol, and the fortress has seen many a bloody battle with foreign foe. In just 45 minutes, the Aachen Seebahn travels from Jenbach in the Inntal up to the Aachensee, the biggest lake in the Tyrol. The oldest rack railway in the world was inaugurated here in 1889. The boats on this Tyrolean fjord are waiting for their passengers. The Zillertal, opposite the Aachensee, is the most popular and best-known holiday region in the Tyrol. The Zillertaler Hochenstrasse is one of the most beautiful high mountain roads in Austria. And a special attraction is the journey up to the tiny Zamstertal, to the imposing Schleggeis water reservoirs. Returning to the Inntal, we visit Halle, a medieval town whose old town is one of the best preserved in the whole of Europe, and where the world's first large silver coin was minted. At the junction of Unter Inntal and Ober Inntal is the Tyrol's metropolis of Innsbruck, the Florence of the north, and the capital of the mountains. The Golden Dackel is the city's main landmark, a splendid stone balcony with a slanting roof whose copper tiles shine out in the sunlight and from which it derived its name. Emperor Maximilian I briefly made this city the center of the Habsburger realm. He transferred his residence from Meran to Innsbruck. The Hofkirche was meant to be his tomb, but black figures guard a cenotaph, an empty sarcophagus, because Emperor Maximilian was buried in the Wiener Neustadt and his heart in Ghent. After his death, power reverted to Vienna. The journey north leads across the Fernpass to Erchwald, a romantic tourist destination close to the German border, at the foot of the Zugspitze and protected by the Wettestein Mountains. The imposing mountain station at the top of the Zugspitze has an hotel, a panoramic restaurant, and a meteorological station that can today also be reached from the German side. At a length of 65 kilometers, the Ötztal is the longest valley in the Inntal. The Ötztal became world famous due to the discovery of a mummy, the man in the ice, who was known as Ötzi, and who perished in the High Alps. Paznaun is the name of a high alpine valley in the west. In the upper Paznauntal is Ischgl, that is located at an altitude of 1,400 meters above sea level. This former agricultural village has now developed into a chic winter sports resort. At the end of the valley, and at an altitude of 1,500 meters, is the small village of Galtur, at the foot of the striking Silvretta Massiv. The Arlberg is situated at the end of the Tyrol. St. Christoph lies close to the pass. Since the Middle Ages, there's been an inn here that has sheltered travelers on their dangerous journey across the mountain. The precarious road that leads to Zurs was constructed in 1900. And 300 meters further on is Lech, the most famous village in the Arlberg region. Tourism gradually developed and brought the mountain regions a different kind of wealth. Cable cars and mountain lifts were built, and visitors arrived in their thousands. Each season of the year, this popular alpine holiday region attracts visitors from all over the world. Vorarlberg is the westernmost federal state in Austria. This paradise in front of the Arlberg begins in the rugged valleys of the Alps that meet in Bludenz, a traffic junction that is also the gateway to the Montafon. Despite many devastating fires and several rulers, this beautiful old town still has its very own medieval charm that can be seen in its ancient lanes, arcades, castles, and churches. Along with its various valleys, the Montafon is one of Austria's most popular tourist destinations. The history of settlement here began with the Walser, who built their houses in the mountain slopes. Small mountain villages originated, such as the Bartholo Marburg settlement with its fine historic churches. To the west, the land opens up. From the fortress, there's a wonderful view across Feldkirch that looks like an old oil painting. Here, it's easy to imagine medieval nights and the life of bygone times. The beautiful civic houses of the well-preserved old town, with their atmospheric arcades and fresco-covered facades, indicate that the city's history is still very much alive. Mighty fortified gates, such as the Tschürer-Tor and the Müller-Tor, as well as the Pulverturm and the Zeughaus, bear witness to former times that were far from peaceful. The small town is located at the foot of the medieval Schattenberg, where once the megalomaniac Counts of Montfort caused much grief to the population. The Bregenzerwald in the northern part of Vorarlberg is an area of the Alps that has managed to retain its natural splendor. Green hills, valleys, and mountains. Here tradition is important, as indicated by the old farmhouses, traditional rural clothing, and local dialect. Typical of the Bregenzerwald are its mountain farms. The many churches and chapels that adorn the landscape demonstrate the deep faith of the local people. Since 1923, Bregenz has been the capital of Vorarlberg. It's a small town on the eastern banks of the Bodensee, close to Germany, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein. The Celts settled here and were subsequently driven out by the Romans. In the Middle Ages, the Counts of Bregenz and Montfort ruled this area. In 1451, Bregenz became part of the Habsburger, and during the 30 Years' War, the Swedes destroyed the town. Settlements close to water often have a special appeal. Thus, an opera festival staged by the waters of the Bodensee has proved to be a highly popular event. On our journey south, we visit Kaprun. This former mountain farm village became well known due to the massive water tanks that were built here. In the 1920s, it was decided to collect the melting water of the glaciers and harness them in a power plant at an altitude of more than 2,000 meters above sea level. Both mountain lakes are surrounded by rocks and thus blend harmoniously into the landscape. Only the dams themselves show man's intervention. The huge dams are up to 120 meters high and at the base 70 meters wide. The reservoirs contain between 81 and 85 million cubic meters of water. Around 8,000 people worked on this major project in the high mountains under extremely harsh conditions. The power plant was celebrated as a miracle of technology, and it's a major technical achievement. South of the Felbetan is East Tyrol, a fascinating and mainly untouched natural landscape that since the Treaty of Saint-Germain has been the part of the Tyrol that geologically belongs more to Carinthia. The route from Innerschlössl up to the Großvenediger Glacier is quite arduous, but eventually the glacier makes it all worthwhile. Huge waterfalls and a bird of prey sanctuary are highlights of the Kalsetal that is situated on the western side of the Grossglockner. The Wirgental, with its main village of Wirgen, is a cultural gem with wooden houses and various fine buildings. And the Pilgrim's Church of Maria Schnee in Obermann is famous for its well-preserved Gothic frescoes that are like something from a religious picture book. Visitors to Umbal can visit the waterfalls of the same name by way of horse and carriage. The waterfalls plunge wildly into the depths below. St. Veit in the De Fregental is the highest health resort in the region. A cable car leads up to the Bruggealm, from where the view extends across the breathtaking mountain world of East Tyrol, a real paradise set in the high Alps. Several mountain pastures at over 2,000 meters above sea level provide a welcome break for exhausted walkers, such as Jagdhausalm, one of the oldest mountain pastures in Austria that's still in use. Linz is the capital of East Tyrol. This mighty castle of the Counts of Goetze guards the main square that was once used by the Celts, Illyrers and Romans. Most of the buildings of this enchanting old town date back to the high season of the Middle Ages. Here, southern flair and religion are omnipresent. The sight of this famous mountain village at the foot of the Grossglockner is truly captivating. Heiligenblut. The Celts and the Romans searched for gold and silver here. From the Josefshöhe, there's a spectacular view over the Pastures, the longest glacier in the Eastern Alps that is located beneath the highest mountain peak in Austria. But the dramatic warming of the atmosphere in recent years has also managed to affect the Pastures. It's now melting at an unprecedented rate. The Grossglockner High Alps Road travels through one of the greatest natural landscapes in the world, the Hohe Tauern National Park. A remarkable mountain world in which nature is at its most glorious. This is the most famous road through the Alps. It crosses each of the climatic and vegetation zones of both Austria and the Arctic, with meadows, forests, mountain pastures, rock and ice. Once the Celts traveled across this mountain summit, followed by the Romans and later the Saumer. The Grossglockner has always been a source of fascination. At the end of the 18th century, the first attempts to conquer it proved unsuccessful. But times have changed, and it has now indeed been conquered. And there's even a high alpine road that travels across the mountains and through the Hohe Tauern. The extensive Hohe Tauern National Park covers no less than 2,500 square kilometres. It's one of the most impressive alpine landscapes in Central Europe. The geology of the Hohe Tauern has been influenced by numerous natural cataclysmic events, including several ice ages. Numerous fertile meadows and indigenous animals indicate the presence of local mountain farmers. The discovery of copper and zinc and later iron ore attracted various settlers to this high mountain area. Each year, the idyllic beauty of this alpine region attracts a growing number of visitors. This is hardly surprising, as the region is a totally natural landscape that has, for the most part, been left unspoiled by man. Winter in the Hohe Tauern National Park usually lasts for 8 months. But when summer comes, the natural beauty of the Alps blossoms all around, and those who come here can enjoy the relaxing atmosphere of pure nature. Carinthia is Austria's southernmost federal state and borders both Italy and Slovenia, the sunny heart of Europe. Carinthia's oldest city, Friesach, has retained what must be the true ambience of the Middle Ages. Amid the landscape is a 150-meter-high limestone rock. It was settled during the Bronze Age. Berg Hoch Ostewitz Castle was mentioned for the first time in 1200 AD. It is the most famous knight's castle in Austria and served as a model for the Walt Disney movie Cinderella. 5 kilometers north of Klagenfurt is an ancient building high above the Zollfeld. This is the location of the impressive castellated church of Maria Saal. The cultural heart of Austria has much to offer, including this open-air museum. Klagenfurt is the administrative center of Carinthia, a middle-class garden city that, although it does not contain the fine buildings of the aristocracy, does have a good helping of southern flair, and the nearby Wörthersee each year creates a magnificent atmosphere of summer. Following a devastating fire, Emperor Maximilian I handed over the city to its inhabitants. Carinthia's real heart beats within the region around Klagenfurt that is surrounded by high mountain ranges. This is the Wörthersee, Austria's southernmost lakeland resort, and one of the warmest lakes in Europe. With the Maria Wörth Peninsula and Velden, a fine resort town that lies at the end of the Wörthersee. Yet the elegant lakeside casino doesn't only attract the wealthy. On the southern shoreline of the Ossiacher Sea is the Stift Ossiach, a Benedictine monastery that was built in 1028 and is probably the oldest in Austria. Villach, gateway to the south, located on the banks of the river Drau. This, the second largest city in Carinthia, is full of busy traffic making its way to nearby Italy. Between the Carnischen Alps and the Lienzer Dolomites, the river Geil has created a deep canyon, the Lessachtal, a picturesque valley that is also known as the Valley of 100 Mills. An isolated and unknown paradise set amid captivating and untouched mountain scenery. Amid the Nockbergen is the Millstatter Sea. In 1469, the Order of the George Knights chose Millstatt as the center for a rebellion against the invading Turks. Later followed the Jesuits. Due to their high demands on the local population, they caused a rebellion among the local farming community. From the Mölltal, a cable car travels to infinity. An adventurous journey into the mountain world of Reisseck. From here, there are various pathways that seem to lead to the heavens, to a rock-strewn mountain world. A celebration of both earth and sky. For thousands of years, a small river created one of the most beautiful sights in the Alps, the Raga Canyon. Here, the natural power of water cut its way through the stony mountainscape. An impressive demonstration of the incredible power of nature. Appriach is famous for its mills. On these steep mountain slopes, one mill was built upon another in order that they could each utilize the water power from a single source. One of the most individual and finest landscapes in Carinthia is situated northeast of the Millstatter Sea. The Nockberger, that was designated as a national park in 1987, along with the splendid Nockalm. The magic of this landscape is reminiscent of ancient legends that tell of Walpurgisnacht. It was said that dancing witches and wizards once met here with a courageous treasure hunter who attempted to discover the secret hiding place of a vast treasure buried within the mountains. However, the treasure still remains undiscovered. The national park covers 216 square kilometres and includes the Nockberge with its green hills and characteristic forest of larch and Swiss stone pine. Well-maintained roads that blend into the landscape make it possible to explore the park by car. Pathways lead to mountain pastures and across flower-filled meadows. The natural aroma of the mountain landscape relaxes both body and soul. Fortunately, the wonderful, unique mountain landscape of this high plateau that is almost tundra-like has been well protected, despite heavy bureaucracy. Graz is the capital of Styria, the second largest city in Austria and European capital of culture in 2003. Both the Celts and the Romans used the Schlossberg for various rituals. And since 1894, there's been a railway line here. The mountain can also be negotiated on steps carved into the rock. On the Schlossberg summit is a clock tower, the main landmark of Graz. The view across the city's red rooftops makes it easy to understand why this old town has been designated as a World Heritage Site. Graz boasts the largest and most well-preserved medieval city centre of any German-speaking city. But it's also a city of Italian Renaissance design. The Landhaus is the city's most famous example of this. It originated from several buildings. Close to the Landhaus, there was also an armory. In 1699, this Standische Zeughaus contained more than 185,000 objects. The most spectacular project of this cultural capital of 2003 is situated in front of the Minorites Monastery on the River Mur, a Conchi island. Emperor Friedrich III had this Gothic cathedral built in 1438 as both a church for the city's inhabitants and also for the royal court. It's located next to the castle. The magnificent late Baroque altar, the imposing pulpit, and the Rococo-style organ are only a few of the many treasures of this religious building. Graz, a city of age-old traditions. Burgenland is the easternmost federal state in Austria, and Eisenstadt is its capital. It was the hometown of Joseph Haydn. It was once the end of Europe, close to the Iron Curtain. But today, this small town on the edge of the Pannonic Plains is a prosperous trading and cultural town, whose old district still possesses its original charm. The well-preserved castle of the former monarch, the Count of Esterházy, is today the setting for numerous concerts and festivals. The nearby Neusiedlersee is a huge shallow lake in western Pannonien. It is not only the national border between Austria and Hungary, but also the geographical border between East and Middle Europe. The lake is a nature reserve that is unique in Europe. It features a number of reeds as well as an untouched wildlife and plant kingdom within a salt savanna of swamps and ponds that in 1997 was designated as a World Heritage Site. The small villages of this region have retained their traditional way of life, with farms and agricultural produce as well as their livestock and lush grazing pastures. The area has a favourable climate ideal for the local vineyards. Rust is proudly called the City of Wine, as around 500 hectares of vineyards surround the Freistadt. This splendid old Baroque town is a protected monument. Storks also add to the popularity of this region. They return here each spring to build their nests in the chimneys of the local buildings. This traditional area, that is quite different from many other parts of Austria, marks the end of our journey. A journey that has shown us Austria's many faces. Although this former powerful realm of the Habsburger is now a relatively small country, its history, traditions, and the diversity of its remarkable landscapes have retained their irresistible allure. Austria will always be the majestic land in the very heart of Europe.